Well, welcome back to the Social World podcast. I'm Dave Niven, and as usual, it's a delight to have your company here on this safeguarding podcast. And today, I'm absolutely privileged to have with me Michael Beasley, who's the Bishop of Bath and Wells. Welcome to the program, Michael.
Thank you for having me, David. It's good to be with you.
Okay, now you actually exist in an organization that's had a bit of a rattling nationally recently in terms of safeguarding. But I know, and I know that you do, that under the water, under the surface, if you like, of all this media shower, there's so much good work goes on. I mean, how do you feel about seeing things as they evolved nationally recently with the resignations and the challenges? Do you feel we've actually got through that now?
I think my response is one of just great sorrow. And principally, that's for people who have been so badly let down by the church in previous decades, and some who are still let down today. Our focus must be on those who are survivors, and what has happened to them. And as a bishop, one of my it's a strange word to use, but I think it's true. Privilege is to meet with people who have been subject to abuse and to understand something of their story and what it has meant in their life. And that for me is the biggest motivator for me of my passion to see our churches to become as safe as they can be.
Yes.
Um, and I'm so proud here in our own diocese of Bath and Wells when I see the immense amount of activity taking place in local churches uh, to work towards safety. So that's work around recruiting people safely, about having good policies and processes in place, about being aware of domestic violence when that rears its head. So much good work happening. Um, we've just been audited as a diocese to look at what's going on, and that's been really encouraging.
Mm.
Um, but we're constantly aware that this is an ongoing journey, and our challenge is to say, how can we do better? What can we build? How can we make sure that the quality is there of what we're trying to do?
Now, you yourself were a bishop in Hereford, I believe, before, from about 2000.
Hertfordshire, Hertfordshire,
Hertfordshire, sorry.
Hertfordshire.
Sorry. This is my Scottishness coming down.
It's
And and 2015, and since you actually took over these roles, did you expect that safeguarding would become so much on the agenda within your work?
I think what's revolutionized during the time that I have been a bishop has been the depth and the quality of response that we seek to make whenever a safeguarding issue arises. Um, that's by no means a claim to perfection, and I'm sure that it doesn't always happen in the way that we'd really want it to do. Um, but when I think back, I've been ordained for 25 years now. And when I began as an ordained person in the church, safeguarding was barely spoken at all. It was very cursory. Um, I worked in the Diocese of Oxford from 2010 to 2015, where I had the safeguarding officer was a member of my team. Uh,
Hmm.
that was a half-time post for an area the size of Wales.
Yes.
Uh, Whereas now I look at our commitment, I look at our investment, I look at the resources we're putting into safeguarding, and it's totally revolutionized what we're doing.
Hmm. Do you think it's Do you think all the recent publicity has in some way made people more cautious about attending church and or interacting with the church? I mean, it's a huge question, I know, but just generally your gut feeling.
I think that's a really interesting question. I was very conscious of that uh, at Christmas this last year. Would people want to come to churches at Christmas in the immediate aftermath of the Macon report?
Yeah.
Um, uh, and thankfully, certainly if I speak for the experience here in Wells, that didn't seem to be the case.
Hmm.
I think what worries me is that I encounter much more is the one of the what happens because of the very right uncovering of the stories that have been made is that often there's an understanding out in the general public that churches aren't really doing anything. Uh, I met somebody just last week who said to me, "Oh well, it's terrible to hear this because you're not really on top of this, are you? Nothing's really happening." Uh, and I didn't wish to be defensive with that person, um, but felt it was just important to say, "Well, there is this happening, this happening, this happening, this happening,"
Mm.
and they were really surprised.
Mm.
Uh, so it's not to preach a counsel of perfection, but I think part of our challenge now is to say this is what is happening to enable our churches to be safer. Um,
Mm.
and at what point is it right to have the right confidence that this is okay or that this is being worked on?
I know from talking to you before, though, that you're very committed to the idea of letting people know all the good work that goes on. And if you combine that, I mean, prior to ordination, you were qualified as an epidemiologist. I understand that, which is a question of an analyzing things and how they come about. Now, I also know that you were very involved with helping children in low income countries in terms of poverty. And then during that time, and now as well, I believe that you're involved with, is it Vaccinate? The
Have been, yes, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, which like is something that nobody. Well, I didn't. I've got to be honest. Until I found it when I was looking, at your background, I didn't realize that it's what goes on in the shadows. If you see what I mean, and I think the church is a bit like that at the moment. I mean, people do say, look, the church's public relations and marketing does leave a bit to be desired nationally. Would you think that's fair?
Um, I don't know if that's so much fair. I think the issue is that if there is one organization whose actions really should match its rhetoric, then folk feel that most of all about the church.
Hmm.
Um, and this has been the enormous sorrow of reading the Machin report
Yeah.
and seeing those terrible things happen to the people affected, and yet an organization that was more interested at that point in the preservation of its reputation. That was awful. um, and and I think that's what needs to drive us all and grow our commitment to making the church safer, because we've just got to do everything we can so that the gap between what we say and what we do, um, uh, that you can't put a piece of paper through it.
Well, in the recent audit that you referred to, that let's for the record say Bath and Wells have come out strong and come out well from. There was also talk, although not implicitly, but certainly referred to in terms of the new challenges, if you like, of safeguarding, the contemporary challenges that weren't the same as even 10 years ago. And the question of how do you turn this oil tanker around to try and deal with that as well. So I'm thinking of things like human trafficking, slavery, and of course the absolute inexorable rise of abuse on the internet. And how do we prepare the people that we've got a responsibility for helping for these kind of challenges as well as the traditional recognized safeguarding problems? That's the sort of, I don't know if you've got, yeah, I'm going to have a stock answer, but do you understand what I'm saying? It
No,
does.
absolutely. I mean, I'm the parent of a 13-year-old and a soon-to-be 12-year-old, and um, as a parent, I'm pretty terrified about what they will be encountering on social media.
Yeah, yeah,
Um, and I would love our churches to have the credibility to speak into these big societal issues that exist around us, of pornography
mm,
on the net, of abuse on the net, as you say, of modern slavery, of abuse that goes on within families. Um, uh, but I think that's why our getting our own house in order is so critical, because uh, when we've been dealing with the terrible scandals that have come out of what went on in previous years, it just shreds our ability to speak into those things. Whereas we know within our wider culture, there's an absolute necessity that all of us commit to addressing them.
yeah. I actually feel that people will listen. I think that scandals, yes, human failings, yes, but the church has still got such a presence in the community that I think it still will. That's this is in my personal view. I think it still will be listened to. And just as the question though, of all these other issues, is the question of improving the eyes and the ears of those in the parishes, if nothing else, to
And
look for things that are not right.
And I think that's a terrific thing that goes on, because, as you say, we're present in every square foot of the land
Mm,
as church. And when I think about activities that we do, like running food banks, then often those become places where all kinds of things become apparent. You were mentioning to me just today about some folk running a food bank
yeah,
who'd done the training on domestic abuse, so they were able to spot the signs
yeah,
and able to help people when that was needed.
yeah. More the merrier, actually. I think, and we've got to continue with that. I mean, another thing I'd like to ask you about is, generally speaking, I was absolutely surprised. I don't know why I should have been, but to do with the Anglican Church generally, that only 2% of Anglicans live in England.
Absolutely. If you want to know who is a typical Anglican in the world today,
Hmm.
they are then they are likely to be a woman aged around 30 living in sub-Saharan Africa.
Is that is not
uh,
incredible? I know, I know.
Um, and also I think I've been fortunate to spend a lot of my working life in Africa, and it is the greatest joy to see the vibrancy and life of the Anglican Church around the world. It's an extraordinary organization.
Well, it's interesting because I have one or two people who are volunteers helping me with the Social World podcast, and one of them's a young woman who just the other day I said, how was your weekend? And she said, oh, fine, I went to visit my father. And I said, all right, yeah. She said he's a Church of England minister. I said, all right, lovely. Where is he based? She said, Switzerland.
Yeah, we're all over the places. So it's when we had the Lambeth Conference of Bishops in 2022, which gathered bishops from all around the world, and it was a revelation. I did not know there were Anglicans in Korea, for example.
Right, right. Well, now look, in a few weeks, I'm going to Church House in London to a meeting with hopefully as many as possible of all the other chairs of safeguarding boards, DSAPs from the 42 dioceses. What sort of messages would you think we should be talking to each other about, or doing, or listening to each other about, and what activities, given the recent year or two that we've all had? Because my understanding is these are hugely experienced people who are, staffing the boards, if you like, chairing the boards in each diocese, and they're very, very senior people, chief constables, ex police and crime commissioners, senior social workers, etc., who've got masses of experience. My view is, and I've got to be personal about this, is that they are underused nationally in many cases. Not in Bath and Wells, I've got to say, and I'm not just saying that, but generally speaking, there are many dioceses who really could do with more support. Is that your thinking as well?
I I'm not sure I could comment on the resourcing of other dioceses to really know to answer that. But if I was to say what I would encourage you all as chairs to do, um, but my experience of organizations is that often we can get very caught up in how stuff is done,
Mm.
rather than being uh, really committed to understanding what are the outcomes of the work we do. And I think some of our recent discussions about safeguarding, for example, that which took place at General Synod in February, was to my view, uh, too much weighted towards looking at how we organize ourselves, rather than asking the principal question of, are we doing what we need to do to make our churches safer?
Yes.
And I really hope that uh, independent chairs will ask those really tough questions of us all about, are we getting the results we want to see? Because if we're not, then we're doing the wrong things. But if we are seeing the right results, then how can we do even more of what we have?
No, I think that's a fair point. You have a very large diocese. I know it's not necessarily the largest, but it is pretty huge in terms of its size. And I know when you arrived, the story was that you and your wife walked right round Somerset. Is that correct?
Yeah, not right round Somerset. I think we walked about 60 miles as we were reflecting on whether to come here, and then quite often now we do at half terms our children go off to stay with their grandparents, and Lizzie and I usually go for a 3 day walk through bits of Somerset, visiting as many churches as we can on the way.
Hmm.
So we did that this recent February. It's a big diocese. We are blessed with uh, extraordinary people that enable its life to happen, situated in every community. So we have fabulous church wardens, parish safeguarding officers, clergy, readers. It's a big, big team effort to enable the whole thing to happen.
But I mean, yeah, for me, it seemed huge when I first heard about the numbers. You know, the not the sort of the near sort of 500 churches and nearly as many parishes. I mean, effectively, it seems huge. Yet you've got a colleague bishop, haven't you?
Not
Or a
at the
position
moment.
for a position for that.
It's a position that's currently vacant. We will be having a new Bishop of Taunton starting, I hope, in the autumn. We're in the process of discerning who to call to that role right now. Um, but as I say, the Church of England is a very, very flat organization, and what is extraordinary is the sense of local ownership and responsibility that communities have for their churches.
Yeah.
I think that's our greatest blessing and bonus, and harnessing that to make sure that our churches are really safe, so that hospitality can be at the heart of the gospel that we preach. That has to be our priority.
And you've got a fantastic resource, if I might say, in volunteers. I mean, parish safeguarding officers, for one, and there's one in every parish, do a stellar job, from what I can understand, in terms of actually informing, enabling, and raising awareness of safety.
Amazing work happening by parish safeguarding officers. So one of my privileges as bishop is to be out and about in benefices and parishes all around the diocese very regularly. And when I'm doing a benefice visit, one of the things I do is meet one-to-one with the parish safeguarding officer or the benefice safeguarding officer. And it's always extraordinary to hear what they do, what they're thinking about, what they're holding together, what they're enabling. how they're advocating for safeguarding in their parish. I'm so proud of what they achieve.
Right. Well, I believe too that there's about 180 church schools within the diocese.
That's correct. Yep.
And of course, we all know that these are places that we really need to inform young people about risks and challenges that exist, especially things that are now, if you like, part of our modern day safeguarding landscape, such as county lines, and all the other paraphernalia that goes with that. I mean, I know that in Yorkshire, there's some fantastic work going on in schools and some terrific books and things, and the police and others are presenting to schools. I think that might be something, if you like, I'll ask them to get to send to yourselves information about what they're doing because it's proving very, very helpful. Would that be something that you might be interested in?
Please do. I think safeguarding within our schools is principally that's held more by the local authorities. But as church too, of course, we have an interest in making sure that
Yeah.
we can support the right kind of work in schools. So we're always open to that.
I don't think the local authorities would object, to be honest. It's
I
good.
doubt it. They'd be welcoming.
Right, final couple of questions. Together stronger, that kind of phrase. There's been a lot within the Church of England recently looking at regional activity. So, for example, the five southwest dioceses, Exeter, Truro, Salisbury, yourselves, and Bristol, are actually forming what they call a Pathfinder group. And it seems to me that the plan is to look at economies of scale, shared experience, and possibly saving money, believe it or not. That effectively, with training or data sharing or whatever, I presume that you would support the increase in that work.
Entirely so. Speaking just personally as a bishop, one of an area of the greatest support that I have in my ministry is my fellow bishops in the Southwest.
Mm.
It's a cracking group, and we love being together. Um, and therefore, I'm always delighted to see that extend into different areas of our diocese life. And if that can happen for safeguarding, well, amen to that.
Right. Well, right. So pretty definite, and I totally agree with you. I really do think that it's a future opportunity here to deal with some of the more, if the more serious and more complex problems, because effectively together we're stronger.
Absolutely.
Okay, one final thing then, Michael Beasley, a message for people who listen and the safeguarding community, if you like, in the UK and abroad, because this podcast does get listened to worldwide. So, what message would you give about the strength of safeguarding within the Church of England as you see it at the moment and thoughts for the future?
As I've said, we've just been audited in Bath and Wells, and that has posed us both with great encouragement, but I still think with ongoing challenge. Um, uh, it's been good to be assured by our auditors um, that the work that's happening is widespread, extensive, uh, of good quality, um, capable of being trustworthy. Uh, but this is always an area where there is room for development and improvement. Um, for example, in terms of how we make sure that we're working well with survivors,
Mm,
how we're making sure that the quality uh, of the work we're doing is not just about engagement, but about making real change happen on the ground. Um, so at this point, I think I'm cautiously optimistic about our local practice, but 100% committed to continuing on that journey of making our churches as safe as we can possibly enable them to be.
okay, well, Michael Beasley, it's been a pleasure talking to you, and I wish you all success in the future for all the activities to do with safeguarding and everything else, because I know there's one or two other things you've got to do in the diocese as well as
Well,
safe.
yeah.
Anyway, thanks ever so much for being on the podcast. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye bye now.